And we are recording. Welcome to Experts Thursday. I love this.
Good to be the expert. Good to be the expert.
You know, I've been doing a lot of writing and reflecting and editing and, working especially on the Expert Summit. And it's taken me back to the roots of what is an expert and why. What's this all about? Yeah, I'm going to do a screen share with you and show you a photo. Let me open the photo first. This photo is from Influence, which is obviously, as you know, the National Speakers Association annual meeting. So here we go. It ought to be coming up in a second, right there. See that?
Yes, yes.
Hey there, Brian. Welcome.
Hey, Brian.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, I want you to look at the screen and notice this group of people. Okay, you don't have to see who they are. Just notice the screen. Okay?
Yes.
That is 2 days ago in Denver at the National Speakers Association's 50-something annual meeting, like 51st, 52nd annual meeting. And these are the certified speaking professionals. So that many people went through the process, documented all of their bookings and all of their credentials and everything, and submitted it, and were certified this year with one of these medallions hung around their neck.
Yep.
Certified Speaking Professional, CSP. Now, as I've mentioned recently, in 1976, when I joined the 200-member National Speakers Association, nobody knew what a professional speaker was or had ever heard of one. They knew people maybe who had given a speech and gotten an honorarium, but as a profession, it didn't exist. Today it does. Now, that's exactly what we're doing with professional expert. And the CPE, Certified Professional Expert, is today what CSP was in 1982. In 81, I got mine, July of 1981. That's a long time ago. But at that time, I had given several hundred paid speeches around the world. I had written a book. I'd done all the things one would do to qualify. And today, look at this. And you should see Facebook. It's alive with people posting their photo with their medallion saying, after many years, finally, I am a CSP. And they take tremendous pride in that. That's my intention when it comes to CPE. We are at like year 2, 1982, for what you see today as the CPE. Look at this, Paula and I. That was Paula yesterday in front of that Austin sign. And
I saw that. I had a beetle wig as well. I had one as well.
Did you?
Yes, I did.
Brian, in case you didn't see it, there was an ad, someone circulated an old ad for $2.99 Beatles wigs. And when the Beatles came out in 64 in the US, I got together with 3 of my friends and we bought Beatles wigs, put them on, put the top down on a convertible and drove around Little Rock, Arkansas. And girls were screaming and people were honking their horns. And they actually thought we were the Beatles because, I'm only like 1% of the population had even seen the Beatles at that time. And so it was a fun deal. But here's what I want you to see. This is a slide on the main stage of the Professional Speakers Hall of Fame awards ceremony. At the beginning of the evening, the existing CPAEs, Council of Peers Award for Excellence, CPAE, which is the Speaker Hall of Fame Award. The existing ones who were in attendance marched across the stage, and all of us submitted in advance a photo of back then and now. And this is mine. So I was sitting at home, and Jason Dorsey, who's a very famous speaker, lives here in Austin, sent me this photograph. He was sitting in the audience in Denver when that came up on the screen. But what fun. And that's CPAE, Council of Peers Award for Excellence. The Cabot Award is you've seen the trophy over in the corner with the cowboy hat just above it. That statue is the Cabot Award for the founder of NSA. This year, the announcement is here.
To present at this moment, 2024 Cabot Award recipient, and I got Scott McCain.
Big moment, big moment. And Scott is the guy in the center with glasses. Dear friend who I've known forever. And I nominated him. Some other people did too. But that was really a treat. There's the award, the actual trophy. This thing.
I did the marketing. I did the marketing for Scott and Randy and Larry Wingen for all their business summits for 3 years. Yeah. For 3 years. Yeah.
Outstanding. So there's Scott with the recent inductees into the Professional Speakers Hall of Fame. And
Go back one more time. Let me see. I knew the Hall of Fame guys. Who's that on the far left?
Far left is Don Yeager, and then a woman named Cy Wakeman, C-Y Wakeman, Scott.
Yeah, I know the rest.
Linda Byers, Swindling, and then John Petz and John Register.
Yeah.
So
John Petz is great, man. He is so good.
Yep. So there's Scott. And this guy, he won the storytelling competition. They had a year-long storytellers competition in NSA, and every chapter had a chance for their members to compete at the local chapter level, and then to compete at the regional level, and then to go on to the final. So it's kind of like a little version of what Toastmasters does, but only on storytelling. And, a little 5-minute presentation. So I volunteered as a past national president to coach some of the people who were competing. And they gave me 3 people to coach. And it was this guy, I think his name's Jeff Nelson. I'm not positive on his name. And another guy named Trent Thoreau, and then a third guy named Darren LaCroix. And Darren LaCroix is a former world champion Toastmasters winner. So they were all 3 good storytellers to start with. And I coached the 3 of them. Darren got eliminated in one of the earlier rounds, but both Trent and Jeff went on to the national competition, and Jeff was the overall winner. So how cool is that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Was Kendra Hall in that competition?
Is that a woman?
Yeah, she's written the book on storytelling. That's her whole gig.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't.
Kendra Hall.
I don't know. By the way, this is a picture of Acres 41, the restaurant where we're going to have the lunch after the summit.
Wow.
So at the end of and it's just 1 block away at the Hotel Otis. So we'll, do the hotel checkup or checkout and conclude our meeting that morning, 12:30. And then we'll just walk down the street or drive down the street and have lunch there. So that'll be fun. This was the reaction when I said who was coming to our summit. Gabby Thomas, who's clearly from Austin, Texas, and a gold medal winner, just was so shocked and pleased. I told her that Brian was coming. I told her that Robin was coming. Tina, and she was just thrilled. So I thought that was very nice of her.
That's good.
There you go. I'm going to stop the screen share. There you go.
That's good.
By the way, I may have mentioned this before, but I want to do this with you guys just as an example. By the way, nice. All dressed up, Brian, all shiny and ready for public exposure, right? Are you going to
Trying
court?
my best. I'm just done court.
Oh, you have.
Yeah, and I don't usually like to expose myself in public, though, Jim. Just so you're aware.
That's good.
So years ago, changing subjects, I went to a meeting called METAL, METAL. It was in Los Angeles, in Santa Monica specifically. And a guy named Ken Rutkowski runs it. And it's a gathering of men talking about success and life issues. And he's built quite a following of probably thousands of people. And every meeting gathers a few hundred, and he has a guest speaker. And I was there that day, not as a speaker, but as an audience member. Well, one of the members of his team is the guy who invented Atari. No, correction. Before Atari, Pong.
Oh,
Remember?
yeah.
He invented Pong, and later he invented and built Chuck E. Cheese.
Wow.
His name is Nolan Bushnell. And Nolan Bushnell was up on the stage, and he said, okay, he said, I've got a icebreaker for you. He said, here, we're going to hold a contest. He said, you get 1 minute on stage, 60 seconds, not 61. He said, and you have to volunteer to get up. He said, but the name of the game is Speed to Cool. Speed to Cool. He said, and your challenge is this. You've got 1 minute to tell us something true about yourself that will cause us to say, cool. And so people would get up and they'd say, I have 6 fingers, wow, weird. My sister was the mayor of our town. Yeah, interesting. Time's up, and then they would go and someone else would come on. And I'll describe the activity again so Mike knows what we're talking about. Welcome, Mike. I'm talking about an exercise Nolan Bushnell does at Ken Rutkowski's metal conferences. It's called Speed to Cool, and you give an audience member 1 minute to tell the audience something true about themselves that would cause them to say, cool. So anyway, people got up and did that, and of course they're timing them. And they were keeping very precise times. So like 34 seconds, Robin got to it. Brian got up, did it in 32. Brian's the winner for now. Who's next? And so think about that for a second. What is something very, very brief that you could tell an audience about yourself in under 1 minute, and it would cause them to say, cool. Robin, I know you've got more than one.
Yeah, we did this at the first summit, which was great. I loved it. I've used that exercise before too. That's good.
Yep.
Or since then. Yes.
So tell me one.
Competed for the $100,000 on Star Search and lost to Sawyer Brown. Got to interview Paul McCartney for a television series I did, and which was amazing. I worked with about 140 different professional speakers as our coach and producer, and interviewed probably over 140, 50, 60 rock stars in my career.
Cool. Do you have one, Brian?
Well, I don't have as many as that, but
No, most people don't.
Mine would be that I was ranked as the second best all-time basketball player behind Magic Johnson to ever come out of college by a scout for the Chicago Bulls.
Cool.
Whoa!
Out of high school, sorry.
Wow.
That's huge.
That's humongous. Yes. Wow.
Cool.
Wow. Okay, my turn. I rode my motorcycle on the Monte Carlo track. where they run the Monte Carlo Grand Prix, right? Um, uh, my song is on Spotify, and it was produced by the guy that produced all of Ricky Nelson's music, Jimmy Haskell. Um, I've lectured in 25 major cities in China to 100,000 people. I've been to Australia for speeches, paid speeches 10 times, climbed Ayers Rock in the outback, and I was hired by Nancy Reagan as the speech trainer for the people competing, not competing, people presenting for her Just Say No campaign.
Wow, that's cool. Yes, all of that. Wow.
Yeah, that just goes, wow. That's beyond cool. You too, Robin. That's wow status.
Yep.
Well,
Here's another one. I
was lucky.
have met in person Roy Rogers, Davy Crockett, Fess Parker, and Roy Acuff. I met him backstage at the Grand Ole Opry.
We got some pretty cool dudes in this thing, man.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Cool dudes. I mean, Mike, if he was Mike on a speed to cool, you would blow us away with all the things. I mean, just I could do one for you. And that is you were in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and on screen with Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio. Cool. And that's just
Wow.
one of your hundreds of unique experiences. How are you doing today? You're muted.
Can you see us today?
Yeah, today, can you see us? There you go. We can see you. No. Try your forefinger instead of your thumb. Like this.
So, Robin, I got to ask. So you directly lost to Sawyer Brown, right, on Star Search?
Yes.
I watched that episode.
Oh my goodness.
I'll be darned. I'll be
Yeah.
darned.
That was a huge experience for us. It was
Yeah.
great.
Yep.
Sad, but still, it was a great experience.
Yeah.
But they've gone on, they became great friends of ours. They actually knew us before we knew that we were competing against them. Star Search had already been going on for half the season, and they were running out of acts. So we got asked to come. We were kind of the band of Dallas at the time, and they had been to see us. We had a residency at a club. They were kind of doing a Holiday Inn tour, and they had come to see us twice, and we didn't know that. And then when we got out there and we were about to go up against Sawyer Brown, they freaked out, came over and gave us big hugs and stuff and talked to us. And it was cool. Our manager thought that they were doing this ballad, and we at the very last minute changed our song on the fly. And you'd gone in, we recorded all of our tracks on in a studio, but we sang live. So we're mimicking playing, but we're singing live. And they started going back to Indiana, old Jackson 5 song. And we couldn't change anything at that late moment on stage because, we're live.
Yeah.
And my cousin sings that song, and it's great. It was great. And we lost by a quarter of a point. And come to find out, the judge that voted against us had just signed Sawyer Brown a week before to his label, Curb Records, in Nashville. So,
Yeah. Curb Records, from the name Mike Curb,
yes.
the Mike Curb congregation. Is that what Mike Curb something association?
Yeah, it's Curb Records. I mean, he's got a lot of different things, but here's the other thing. I went to work for Chris Christian right after that as a marketing director for Word Records, for division of Word Records. And Chris Christian had a trio with Cotton, Lloyd, and Christian. So Michael Lloyd, who was the guy that voted for them, was the A&R director at Curb Records, was the guy that I was working for right after that. And Ernie Phillips, our manager, was his mentor, was Michael's mentor. So when Michael found out that all that was connection, he goes, "Oh my gosh, I love the band, but I just signed Sawyer Brown, so I gave it to them." So we lost by a quarter of a point.
Well,
Wow.
Bummer.
Hey, Jim, can you hear me?
yep.
Yes.
Okay, real quick. Jim, I sent you a text earlier, but I don't know if you got it. I'm going to be silent the whole time. I'm just going to listen.
Okay.
Susie had an emergency surgery last night and had her appendix removed.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
And so I'm in the hospital room and I was trying to get it up on my computer and the doctors keep coming in and she's not feeling very well and I don't want to disturb her peace, but I do want to be with you guys and I want to listen. So I'm going to mute myself again.
Oh,
And that's why, but I can see you, I can hear you, and I'm just being quiet for her. And yes, to the answer to the question popping up, she's okay. They removed the appendix. It didn't burst. They thought it was going to burst.
good,
But yeah, she's on the mend, and we're going to get out in a couple of hours. So
good.
she's just resting and on a bunch of pain meds. So she keeps, she's in and out, and I don't want to disturb her.
You
So
bet. Well, I'll certainly say a prayer for her, and so will Paula, I'm sure. Uh,
thanks. I appreciate that.
yeah, God bless her. Oh,
Yeah, thanks.
thank heavens she's fit.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like when I went in for surgery, I had a radical prostatectomy back in 2017. And my son was there at the hospital with Paula and me. And he came to my bedside and he said, I just want to thank you for showing up all those mornings on the mountain hiking trails. He said, because since you're fit, I'm not as worried about you. And he said,
Yeah.
most people your age, I would be much, much worried. So good for
Yeah.
Sue.
Yeah.
And God
Yeah,
bless.
and she's excited about coming to Austin, so she'll be there, in a couple of weeks.
That's going to be so great. Outstanding.
Yeah.
I'm working
All
on
right.
it hour by hour. Thank you for that.
Good. You're welcome.
I wanted to go back to something you were saying, Robin. That news kind of yanked me out of my mindset where I was going. The last thing you were talking about was the competition. Oh, I know what it was. Here it is. 10 feet from greatness. 10 feet from star, from glory, from whatever. The movie, Darlene Love. Darlene Love was a backup singer on many, many, many major stages and records over the years. And there's a movie called 10 Feet from whatever.
I've seen the trailer.
Yeah. And we watched the movie and it's just so good because she's a major talent and
Yeah.
a very appealing performer on her own. But her entire career was standing behind, everybody from, I don't know, Elvis to James Taylor to you name it. And wow.
Yeah.
Just, and when you look at our collective group, now we're all well known in our own little niche. We're not necessarily famous, but well known we indeed are, right? And well connected. And I think we could easily say we've been 10 feet from greatness on numerous occasions. Wow.
That's cool. That's
So
cool.
what's the difference? What separates us from other people in this way? What's the difference between being a spectator who's 10 feet from greatness versus a participant who's 10 feet from greatness? What's the difference in the perspective if you're in the same position?
I can give a little bit of perspective to that. As a television producer, having a crew out on the road with all these artists, we're on the bus, we're traveling with them for 3 days. We're in the circle, we're in the meetings and so forth. We always told our team, we are not fans, we are peers. And please don't this was before selfies and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Don't, idolize them and, go weird on it. So don't ask for pictures. We'll do group pictures at the end and so forth. And become a professional and equal to them because they'll trust us more if we are doing our job versus being the fan in the first row.
Yeah.
Yet I've been a fan in the first row as well outside of that deal. And it's exciting. It's exciting because I long to be that peer with them. Yeah. And so for me, I'm much more like silly probably, I think in that regard, or wishful. But yet when we're in the business situation or as a speaker, I've been in with other artists, as you well know, a lot of rock stars as my guest. And that's equal as well. I've got to be the peer and not be arrogant or up, my whole point was always in any of those situations, make them look great, make them shine on stage. And so it was comforting to be that way. My nerves went down even though when I'm interviewing Paul McCartney, I was super, super, super nervous,
Yeah.
but in a funny way. But I think it's a difference, particularly in how they see you, a fan in the first row, or Jim right next to me, you know? So it's pretty powerful, actually.
Yeah. Brian, any observations on that?
Sorry, for sure, my mouth was temporarily full.
Oh, that's okay. Well, you go ahead and chew and let us know when you're ready to hop back in. Don't be concerned about that. I'll share. The way I see it, there's a participant who's 10 feet from greatness, and there's an observer who's 10 feet from greatness. And the distance is the same. Perspective is profoundly different because the spectator, the fan, is there to observe and they feel zero responsibility for what's going on. It's like watching TV. When I spoke, I was president of the National Speakers Association years ago, and I was the first speaker that the International Association of Speakers Bureaus ever brought in to speak at one of their conferences. Usually it was just them talking to each other. And so they asked me in my role as NSA president to come and present. And so I stood up in front of the group and I started speaking, and I looked at them, and it was very obvious they were previewing me. So what's going on in their mind is I don't think I would have worn that shirt. You know, if he had some facial hair, he'd look a lot more mature. Ooh, that was a bad word choice. Oh, I could see how this would appeal to an automotive audience. You know, I mean, that's what's going on in their head. And I'm trying to actually communicate with them. So I'm looking them in the eye, and I'm really, really genuinely, here is me, there is you, talking to you. And they are watching me like TV, as if they've got to fill out a score at the end. And I stopped in the middle of my speech and I said, wait a minute. How many of you think I'm doing a showcase? And most of their hands went up. I said, I'm not here to showcase. I'm here to talk. So stop it. So the difference was the investment, right? And it changed it completely changed the energy in the room once I did that transition, that wake up.
That's awesome. They probably respected you greatly for doing that,
I hope so.
because most people would, feel like sucking up to it.
Yeah. Yeah, but I was there to talk about the speaking industry and the profession and what we could do for it, And so I needed collaborators instead of observers or fans. But that's the same thing when let's say you're backstage. I've been backstage at the Grand Ole Opry as a fan. Not part of the crew, not part of the team. I'm back there because somebody paid for our small group to be back there and to touch the stars as they walk by, right? So I've been backstage. But what I found, and I mentioned earlier that I had met Roy Acuff backstage at the Grand Ole Opry. What I found is that my presence, my state of being, influenced them non-verbally. We were walking down the hallway from the room where our dinner had been, and we were dining on the set of what was Hee Haw. Remember Hee Haw, the TV series? And when we first got there, Robert Henry, another speaker, comedian, and we went over and stood in front of the cornfield and the fence and said, where are you tonight? Why did you leave me here all alone? Searched the world over and thought I found true love. You met another and you were gone. And so everybody laughed and we had our dinner. So now we're going on stage, and at the Grand Ole Opry, they let a gallery, bleachers, full of guests sit up there behind the performers during the performances. I didn't know that. So that was amazing to me. But as we're walking down the hallway and all these famous country stars are around, I was not going all gaga on them. Instead, I was nodding, acknowledging them, and just kind of saying, hey, I love your work, you know, that kind of thing, instead of, oh my God, instead of that. And so as we approached the dressing room where Roy Acuff came out, Roy Acuff, for those who aren't aware of him that might be watching this later, is considered sort of the grandfather, the grand poobah of country music. He was a performer, but that's not what he's known for. He's known for being the publisher and sort of the spiritual leader of the entire country music world during his era, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, on and, you know, like that. So walking down the hallway, he came out the door, he looked up at our group, and then he looked at me and stuck out his hand to shake my hand. Hey, how you doing? God, very good today. You know, enjoy the show. And we just went on about our business. But when I'm backstage and I assume the state of being a peer, a respectful peer, I've found that people will treat me as an equal. One more quick story. Dallas, Texas, 1993. The speaker, 1993. The speaker was Art Linkletter, whose best friend was Walt Disney. And Art Linkletter had been on TV when I was a kid, and we would sit around my living room in Little Rock and watch him and eat Mom's homemade chocolate chip cookies. And his show was called People Are Funny. He had other shows like House Party and Kids Say the Darndest Things. Well, anyway, People Are Funny was our big one. So I'm backstage with the guy. And I was the opening keynote speaker the day before. And Art he said, hey, come here. And I walked over, and there was someone else was there with us. And he said, let me tell you a story. Absolutely. He said, when I was in the 1950s, when I was going on vacation, my wife and I would go on vacation with Walt Disney and his wife. And we're all saying, and we're not saying it outwardly, inside we're saying it. He said, in one year we went to Tivoli Gardens in Copenhagen. And as we're walking around, I noticed Walt was taking notes. And I said, what are you doing? He said, look at the twinkle lights in the trees. He said, yeah, they're pretty. He said, no, none of them are burned out. And he's writing it down. Did you see the benches? What? Freshly painted. And the bathrooms are clean. And Linkletter said, why are you writing all this down? He said, because Art, someday I'm going to build a place like this for families. Disneyland was taking shape in the head and heart of Walt Disney at that moment. And Art Linkletter was there.
Wow.
And I got to share in that story as if we were sitting around the living room with Art Linkletter, instead of as if the great Poobah was presenting to us low serfs, right? So I think when we are aware of that, when we remind ourselves, stay in a state of consciousness that makes you a respectful peer, a fellow traveler, then the tension that would come from star status or whatever tends to dissipate, and it makes us more equal. Any observations you want to make about that?
I'll comment on it a little bit. Real quickly, my mom, our family, when I was a kid, we drove to California from Florida, and my mom, we were on the Art Linkletter show, got to go as a guest. And you know how they pick a family out and they bring out that house and you pick what the room they're in? We were that family. And my mom was had to pick out what room they were talking about and what piece of furniture was in that room. That was kind of what you had to do, and you got a new car. We didn't get the new car, but we got tickets to Disney World.
Wow.
Yeah.
Disneyland?
I was like, Disneyland, I'm sorry, yes,
Yeah.
Disneyland.
Yeah.
It was like, I was in like 5th grade or something.
Oh my
But what I was gonna say before, you know, most of my television shows were on TNN, the Nashville Network. So I was in Nashville at TNN a lot, whether it's the Grand Ole Opry, the Ryman Auditorium, the earlier version, or the new version out by Opryland where TNN was. And backstage at Opryland, I mean, at the Grand Ole Opry, unlike most other concert situations where they'll have 2 or 3 acts that are playing, they'll stay in their dressing rooms by themselves. Backstage at the Opry, it's people everywhere. The artists are out mingling, their friends. A lot of them are from Nashville, but they're hanging out with each other, and they're very, very kind and nice. And with all the shows that I did when I was going out on the road with these guys, Trisha Yearwood, at the time when I did her special, she was the Artist of the Year. She was also the CMA Artist 2 years in a row, a Female Vocalist of the Year for CMA. And so she was at the peak. She was so, so good. Now she's Garth Brooks' wife, as you know, after like 20 years or so. But a lot of these people, you put on a pedestal and you think, oh my gosh, and you're that fan person, and you idolize them. But when you get with them and you're just have a relationship and you're not somebody that's Google eyes over them, they're regular people. They're just like we are. And if you treat them like a friend, they treat you back like a friend. And when you get behind closed doors with them, they let all the, showmanship that they have to put on to be that person that they're expected to be down. And, they're tired, they're worn out, they're nervous, they were scared, they missed some words, they did something, they're just like us. And I thought for the longest time that I was going to be so nervous with so many of these people. And I am a lot of times. Even when I was doing all the NASCAR stuff, I interviewed every NASCAR driver. But, working with Jeff Gordon, that's kind of oh, you're with Jeff's team. Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
But they're regular people.
Yeah.
And if we remember that and treat them kindly and like a regular people, I think there was real, oftentimes reciprocate as well.
And I think
And that's in everyday life too.
Day-to-day advice, if you just remember that everybody is regular people, that's the level on which you can connect. But we get so intimidated. Like I've found myself over the years, if somebody was packaged like Brian, had on a suit and was ready to go out and rule the world, and like the chairman of the board of XYZ Corporation, that intimidated me. A senior partner with PricewaterhouseCoopers. Ooh, it created nervousness that I had no reason to have, because I didn't report to the person or anything. There wasn't a line of authority. It's just that tends to be a stereotype that scares people at the lower levels of socioeconomic levels of society. And it's all in our own head, every bit of it.
Well, what's interesting about that? That's true. I always think it's how you're introduced. Because in that situation like you just described, I would feel the same way, because I have no real connection with that person or what they do. But in my world, I could understand I had that same experience. But it's also how you're introduced. Hey, Paul McCartney, come here. This is Jim. This is Jim Cathcart. He's a friend of mine.
Yeah.
And then we keep going. Hey, Jim. Hey, Paul, come here. This is Jim Cathcart, a great friend of mine.
Yeah.
President of the National Speakers Association. President, he's spoken at Toastmasters 3 times. The only person, blah, blah, blah. You give your resume and they go, okay, dude, good to see you, man.
Yeah.
And that evens the playing field. And I was fortunate enough, just because of what my job was, to have that even playing, or not even playing, but within the room, be able to be on the list, if you will.
And have permission to sit at the big kids' table.
Yeah, big kids table, exactly. So, but that was only because of why we were there. Had I saw someone in the hall and just walked by and wanted to start talking to them, they probably wouldn't give me the time of day, because they don't have the time to do that. Or, what's the point? I don't know what this is about, so I'm busy, type of deal.
Yeah.
So how you're introduced, I think, matters a lot. That's why a lot of times in just conversations, if someone walks into a circle of friends and we're talking, I always try to make sure I give them a great introduction, introduce them to everybody else, and them to him or her. So there's oh, okay, good to see you. Yeah, I want to talk to you a little bit later. Let's do that.
Very good. Brian, a while ago you were enjoying lunch. Did you have a comment you wanted to throw into this?
Well, yeah. First of all, I like the concept of just treating everyone like normal people, and treating them respectfully. like normal people. And, I've run into some, a couple celebrities in my life, and I've just been, one was Jason Alexander at Disneyland, and he had his hat pulled down and his hoodie up, and he just looked at me, and he looked at me in the eye, and I was just like, hey, like, this guy obviously doesn't want to be recognized, right? He doesn't want to be acknowledged. I was just like, nice to see you, and just walked on my way, right? And it was, that's just kind of the way I've been. But, the way that I took it when you were talking about being 10 feet from greatness versus being in the front row, so to speak, I kind of took it from the aspect of being on the bench versus being on the floor, right? From the sports analogy, and how big of a difference it can make when you're dedicated and you apply yourself and you take action to be one of those people who can even be 10 feet from greatness, as opposed to just being a bystander.
Yeah. And it's interesting when you assume that state of respectful equality, right? That's probably the better way of expressing it. Respectful equality. You don't necessarily talk about the things that a fan would talk about. For example, if let's say Mike is the Brad Pitt of the scenario, and I'm seated next to him in an audience, waiting for some event to take place. The worst thing I could do is, oh my God, you're my Graham, right? Because that's immediately going to separate the two of us, change our stature with each other, and put some nervousness into the moment for him, because he's thinking, oh shoot, what's coming next? Is he going to whip out his phone? We're going to have to take a selfie, and I'm going to have to say hi to his Aunt Edna. Okay, I'll do it, but I hate doing this stuff. No. So if I'm sitting there and I recognize who he is, then when we make eye contact next, I might say, I really enjoy your work. Thank you. I appreciate the dedication you've made to doing that. Well, thanks. Appreciate that. And then it goes on, nothing from there. Another thing you can do is you can say, look at that. Look, right behind the edge of the curtain. Can you see it? Unbelievable. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. I don't know what that was. I just made something up, but that kind of a dialogue you would have with a complete stranger, like standing on a hillside and saying, my God, what a sunset. Isn't that gorgeous? Yeah. Nothing further required. And that's the key, I think, to the energy being at an optimum for sharing. Robin?
I just had a thought when you were talking about that. My dad always told me, as a pastor, he was a people's pastor. He would love on everybody. Everyone, called him coach. But he always told me to put others first, make it about them, and help them shine. And go first. Don't wait. Go first. Be the one that reaches out to someone, like I was talking about, welcoming someone in a conversation or whatever, and serve as a host. Be like a host, so an interviewer.
Yeah.
And ask them questions, listen to the answer, ask a follow-up question related to that, listen to the answer, continuing to engage them. And a lot of times in scenarios, and I've got several stories about it, but I won't go into, that can be funny, where you do that, and then someone walks away, they go, oh, I really like that person. And someone asks, well, what do you know about them? I don't really know much. He didn't talk, or she didn't talk, but I did all the talking, but it was a great conversation. But you made a point when sitting by Mike as Brad Pitt. I have found in the past, when I have been in a small situation and there's just a couple of people, or maybe me by myself, and in that situation you just described, if I'm at an event and I'm sitting by someone that's famous or well-known or something like that, I'm probably not going to take on that role that I just described.
Right.
I'm not going to be sitting there asking them all the questions, because that's going to be probably perceived as intrusive to them. They don't need me to lift them up and shine. It's likely they might do that to the person that's sitting next to them versus expecting that to be them. But on my other side, if someone else I don't know, who's not someone that's famous, I would do that with. I would engage them
Yeah.
for us at least to have a connection. But I don't think I'd put Brad's, Pitt on the spot and say, "So tell me about you, Brad. What's going on? How you been doing?"
Exactly.
No,
Well,
not
there's
needed.
a woman named Susan Roane, Roane. She lives in San Francisco, and she's a mingling maven,
Yeah.
self-described. She wrote a book called How to Work a Room. And she wrote
I've
this
got it.
back in like the 1990s. And I remember being with her at an event in San Francisco. She and I went to a social event, like a fundraiser, a gala, something like that. And she spent most of the evening taking me around the room by the hand and introducing me to other people. Now, she didn't necessarily know the other people. And that she describes this in her book, which has been revised and re-released recently. But How to Work a Room, she says, like Robin said, take responsibility for being a host, not the host, but a host, and introduce people and find out things about this one and then tell that one about it. And so I ended up feeling like I could spend the whole evening in that room and never meet a stranger after I'd been through the route with Susan. And I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
But coming back, bringing us back to the sort of the golden thread running through all this conversation, it's your state that determines their mode of interaction, that determines the quality of the energy between you and them. In my little 3-minute preview video toward the end of it, the one that just came out that's on the homepage of Cathcart.com, toward the end of it, at about minute 3, or minute 2.5 maybe, there's a scene where I'm sitting on the ground playing an old beat up guitar with a beggar who has an artificial leg, and I'm playing Hotel California and singing, and he's singing along and beating percussion on his artificial leg. And we're sitting in the dirt, and a whole bunch of people are surrounding us, and the people around us don't know how to behave because it's Asia, and they cannot imagine why teacher would stoop so low, literally, as to touch and interact with a beggar.
Wow.
But I was just having a good time with my musical friend. And so we're sitting there singing. And at the end of it, I've got my arm around his smelly t-shirt shoulder, and we're smiling for selfies. And people are putting money in the little hat that he had there for tips. And I asked him his name. His name was Halif, and it was just a great interaction. But it's sort of the mirror image of what we were talking about with the celebrities.
Yeah.
My state was not one of judgment. It was one of respectful equality.
Yeah.
And I just happened to be looking the opposite direction from up on the stage. And I asked, I've told some of you this story before, but I asked my translator, Kitty, to get my tour group together, people that were there following me. And I said, why did I do that? And Kitty said, because you like to play guitar. And I said, no, I did that because all day he sits down there begging and hoping for money, and everybody's looking down on him. And I wanted to give him an experience of feeling like an equal for just a few minutes. And then I said, how long do you think he'll remember that? And the group said, for the rest of his life. And I said, so will I. And then I said, every one of you has the opportunity to do things like that virtually every day, but we walk right past them. So just stop passing up so many of them. And
Great word.
Yeah.
Great word. Wow. Yeah.
But it's the same thread of respectful humility, right? And being a respectful equal in your status whenever you're interacting with other people. It takes the nervousness away from you, takes the potential threat away from their thinking, oh my God, oh no, here it comes, we can't have our own dinner alone anymore. Here comes a fan. Now, there are times when the celebrity, him or herself, will break that veil, pierce the veil. Here's the scenario. It was Easter brunch at the Four Seasons Hotel, Westlake Village, California. My son, director of human resources, he was hosting Paula and me, and he had his wife and 2 children there with us. So the 6 of us are at a big round table in the main dining room for the big fancy Easter brunch. And Jimmy has told us time and time again, if you see a celebrity, do not engage. It's, they come here to enjoy the Four Seasons. They don't want a fan experience. And so, I said, clear, I've got it. I totally understand. However, I'm sitting there at the table and I'm looking at my granddaughter, Amber, and right behind her is a round table of 3. And at that table is Smokey Robinson. Smokey Robinson, for heaven's sakes. And I see him, and I go on about my business. And I did sneak a photo of my granddaughter with him in the background, but I didn't, I made it very subtle so nobody was conscious of that. So anyway, we're sitting there and we're all talking. Jimmy gets up and goes over to get some food and he comes back. And about that time I look up and Smokey Robinson is looking square into my face. He's looking me in the eye. And he smiles at me. He engaged. I'm sorry. But it was not me initiating the contact. Right? And I wasn't going to be rude. And so I'm looking.
What are you looking at me for, man? What are you looking at me for?
Yeah. Hey, you looking at me? Yeah. But
I'm the celebrity here. You're not supposed to be looking at me.
here's what I did. He's looking at me and smiles. And I go, thank you for the music. He gets up and he walks over to our table, still looking me in the eye. I stand up and I put out my hand to shake his. He brushes it aside and says, bring it in. And
Oh,
he
wow.
hugs me. Smokey Robinson initiates a hug with me. And then he said, who are these lovely people? And I said, well, this is my wife, Paula. This is my son, and he was just gracious as could be and sweet to us. And we didn't ask him for anything, no signatures or selfies or anything. And he went on back to his table and life goes on. My son is mortified. I told you not to do that. You do it, Dad. You're supposed to. And I understand. And I guess I should have found a tactful way to not engage, but it was just a bit more than I could resist at the moment.
Had that been me, I'd be sitting there and he gets up and he starts walking to me and I stand up to reach out my hand. Instead of pushing it away and saying, come on, give it away. He said, excuse me, I'm trying to get behind you. I'm going to the guy behind you. He wasn't looking at me. He's looking at the guy behind me.
Good joke. So reflecting on what we've talked about today, what is a takeaway you got from this? Brian, how about you?
Always feel like you belong in the room.
How do you think people can do that? I mean, that's good advice, but it's kind of like believe in yourself. Tell me how to believe in myself. How do I get closer to being able to feel I belong in the room?
I think it's like a self-confidence, just the belief in the fact that we're all people, right? And even though some people have done things that others haven't done or can't do or whatever, doesn't make them any greater or lesser people. They're still people. And I'd rather look at the goodness as to who the person is as opposed to what they've done.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you. Mike? You want to add anything? Nope. Okay, I understand. Yep. So prayers for Susie.
Yeah.
Robin,
Playing off what Brian was saying, you know, I go to a lot of events, and most of the time nobody knows who I am. Why would they? I mean, I haven't done anything that you would need to know about, or unless you knew what I did for my jobs. So I don't ever try to come off as that guy, unless I'm a speaker at an event or I'm performing at an event or something, and
then your name's on the marquee.
yeah. So, and there, that's a different story. But in general, that's not the majority of my life. So I do what my dad says, and I just try to make sure that I'm inclusive and I'm putting other people first, making it about them, helping them shine, engaging in them, playing that host of the role of a host. And I had a learning lesson from this one time. My mentor, Bill Landers, who was my executive producer, brought me in and taught me everything I know about television and music in my spiritual life as well, for the most part. I was producing a travel show for TNN one year, and I was going out all the locations that we were trying to go to, meeting with the tourism board and the Chamber of Commerce. And I would meet with them and to try to figure out what we were going to showcase in their episode. It's an RV travel show. Jim Ed Brown from the Grand Ole Opry was our host. And I would writing and producing that show. And so I had to meet with these people to know what I was going to put on the show or what I was not going to put on. And so Bill was with me one time. He joined me. And in those conversations, there's a lot of people around, and they're telling me all about their thing, what they were doing, and excited about something. Well, I was younger, a lot younger at that point, thinking I needed to kind of keep the conversation we're going, or they would say something about, well, it's not the Grand Canyon, but I've done the Grand Canyon, but it's not what we've got. It's not the Grand Canyon, but it's pretty cool. And I said, what'd you do to the Grand Canyon? Well, I got to do this. Oh, wow. I did too. We not only did that, we got to go down the river. We took the donkeys down the hill. We did the helicopter ride through I was producing a show there. It was such a great, and Bill's, I wasn't that hyper, but that was basically, the essence. And Bill pulled me aside one day after we got back and said, hey, buddy, I don't know that you know this. You probably don't, because I don't think you do this intentionally, but you're one-upping people. You're one-upping people. They're giving you their cool story, and you jump in on them. You interrupt as well as, it's one thing to respond back and have a connection, but you are jumping in and taking the glory away from them. And I was ticked at first. I go, what are you talking about? I didn't do that, but and I thought about it, go, oh my gosh, that's right. And I've done that a lot. I had to really work on that. And I still do it often. I try not to. I think about that because I've done a lot of things that were unique to me and only because of my job. And yet I can steal the thunder for somebody. And I don't want to do that. So I try to really put out the idea of put others first, engage them and help them shine. And if I see somebody at church or whatever, and they're kind of standing off to the side, I will go out of my way and bring them in. And I have a lot of young guys that I'm kind of their buddy and mentor to somewhat at church. And they always now talk about that. And I'm using that as a model and teaching them what to do, doing the same thing. So I think that being confident is positive. You don't want to feel like you're under anyone else. You're an equal, but do that by giving them the stage, helping them shine. And if someone knows you and wants to ask you questions, sure, go for it, talk about it, but help them stand out.
That goes even deeper into the essence of this. I was talking with a guy back in Arkansas years ago. I had a friend who was suicidal. And I said, what do I do for my friend? This guy was a psychiatrist. He said, get him to do anything. I said, well, what do you mean by anything? He said, I mean, literally anything. Get him to do something. Get him to, I'm pulling this out of the air. Get him to paint basketballs. Something completely useless to the world, but get him to do something. Give him a task. And I said, why? He said, because when he has something that he needs to do, he has a little bit of a sense of purpose. And the more meaningful that thing that he's doing is, the more sense of purpose it gives him. And a sense of purpose displaces his fear and loathing about himself and takes away some of that impulse that's leading to his suicidal tendencies, right?
That's good.
And so I've looked at that and listened to that guidance over the years in different contexts with people who were just afraid or had a lot of self-doubt or whatever. And I've realized that in almost every instance, the magic key to turning things around is get the focus off of you. People tell me, I have stage fright. No, you don't. You're not afraid of speaking. You're not afraid of the stage. You're afraid of judgment. Stop thinking about you. Think about the message you have for the audience. Yeah, but I'm afraid of speaking. No, you're not. You're speaking right now. You know, and there's two of us here. You're public speaking right now. So you don't have a problem with that. You have a problem with what you think we're thinking. So
That's right.
get the focus onto the other people. And same thing in selling. How do you sell more? No, you don't tell more. Definitely don't tell more. Ask more, listen more, probe more, you know, and be relevant to them. So great advice. I think we shared some pretty notable wisdom today. And I appreciate all of you being here. And we're just going to send love and light and healing to Susie. And God bless her and God bless you, Mike. Okay, you guys take care and let me know how I can be helpful. I've got a pretty detailed agenda of the summit event, and you're all three going to be there. So I will send a copy to each of you, and you can look it over and add or correct or alter anything you want to. Okay, take care. Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Yeah, bye.
See you, everyone.